Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. It's your host, Annalena. And today I have some very special news for you, which has to do with the name of this podcast. And in a way, this is an end, but also a new beginning. And with that, this is going to be the last episode of the what we know as the Art of Slowing Down podcast, which actually first started out as the Art of Slowing Down to Quantum Leap podcast, but then I felt like it was a little bit too long, so I dropped the add-on, even though I firmly believe that for quantum leaps to happen, it is just essential for us humans to slow down. And I want to talk a little bit about why I decided to have this part of this podcast come to an end. And with this, also, there's going to be a fresh start because the podcast itself is going to continue, but it's going to be under a new name. And if you have been following me along for all these last month and maybe even years, you probably already know what the new name is going to be. But if this is the first time you're listening, hey, welcome to my world. Let me tell you a little story. So I started this podcast almost 3 years ago. I think the very first episode I launched on January 11 in 2022. So it's like we're almost just almost 2 months away from the 3-year anniversary, so to say. And that was such a pivotal moment for me in my business because I just felt like I have a lot of things to share. And I also absolutely love having conversations with people. So I kind of enjoy both just talking myself and interviewing amazing souls and just connecting with other humans. It's always very deeply fulfilling to me. And also the connections I've made over the years with that. And with a doubt in my mind, having my own podcast was one of the best things that I ever decided in my business because it put me into showing up more consistently. And I think I talked about this many times already, especially because I'm now actually leading other conscious leaders to also launch their own podcasts. And when I was promoting my program, the Easy Podcast Launch, I think I talked a fair share about this as well. But again, I want to emphasize this because it is so important. I think anytime you are serious about, launching your own business to share your message with the world and really change people's lives, we got to show up in some way or form consistently. And podcasting was the one way that really felt aligned to me because I had also tried out YouTube before that, and that just didn't feel right. I think I wasn't camera ready. But today, now almost 3 years later, actually, eventually, it was the beginning of this year, I also decided that all my podcast episodes are also going to be released on YouTube. And I also shared some additional videos also on YouTube in the meantime. And so now slowly over time, my YouTube channel has also been growing. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you all for your time, for your love, for your support, for sharing my message, for subscribing to my YouTube channel or to my podcast. And it really means the world to me. So with that, I want to let you know why I am relaunching this podcast and why the Art of Slowing Down is coming to an end and what the fresh new name is going to be. So first of all, I felt for quite a while, I think almost for a year now, that I wanted to change the name of the podcast. And it didn't quite make sense because I really love talking about slowing down. As you know, it's really one of my core messages, and it's going to continue being one of my core messages. But I somehow felt maybe I want to even niche down more in some way. And so I just played with the idea. And anytime I tried with my mind to figure out what the new podcast name should be, it just didn't work. It got really frustrating, and I felt really excited about a name for one day, and the next day, not so much anymore. And then as I kept having more interviews actually on this podcast, there was one word that kept coming up more and more. It was the pausing. It's like, okay, there's something with pausing. And then it was a conversation also here on this podcast with one of my guests, Yvonne Stoltzfus. And I think she mentioned in the interview, which was about the pleasure of healing. Highly recommend you catch that episode, by the way, if you haven't done so. And I think she mentioned in there the magic pause. And I was like, my whole body, it was this visceral feeling. I could just feel it. And I even said it in the episode. Oh, that's the name of my new podcast, The Magic Pause. And but then it took me a little while to actually come around because I still felt like, no, it should be something different or whatever. And I tried to overthink it, but I always kept coming back to the magic pause. And it felt really aligned, like a full body, yes, in my body. So I finally surrendered. I was like, okay, it's going to be the magic pause. And it also makes a lot of sense because, I have noticed for myself while slowing down is super important and continues to be important. Sometimes I actually have to take a pause, like I'm doing right now. Actually, communication and speaking is the most powerful, I've also learned, when we can quiet our voice for a moment and take an intentional pause instead of just talking and talking and talking and talking, right? And also in my daily life, I have noticed I can work slowly and slow down, but if I continuously stay on my computer and I don't stop, if I don't take intentional pauses, I still get drained and exhausted. Especially as an online entrepreneur, I think it's so easy when you work from home for the most part that you always have something you can work on and do on your computer screen. And I have become more and more aware that I have to take more intentional magic pauses. Also, for example, at least one day on the weekend, or maybe the whole weekend, where I'm just not engaging in anything on my business, right? I'm still working on this, to be honest. In a way, I need the reminder of the magic pause probably as much as you do it. I think we all need this. And in just today's world of information, overwhelm, and constant distractions and overstimulation around us, I think it's so important for us to slow down and then really take a magic pause. Sometimes just to notice how shallow your breath is and take a deep breath. Let's do it together right now, right? Just and then release and let go. And then we realize how kind of stressed we were because we were still rushing in a way. So the other thing where pausing also has been coming up as a theme is in the gene keys. The gene keys, as you probably will know, is one of my favorite topics to talk about along with human design. And in the gene keys, we have these 64 archetypal energies, and each of these gene keys has always these 3 levels of consciousness as a shadow, the gift, and the city. And our goal is to live more in the higher frequency of the gift. And the whole idea of the gene keys is this concept called the art of contemplation. How we actually use the gene keys, how we read them or we listen to an audio about it. And then we start to become aware of our shadows in our daily life. And actually, the very first thing of the art of contemplation, like the foundation, almost the thing without it, you probably don't get much out of the gene keys at all, is pausing. It talks about it as pausing. And I think that's oftentimes what people miss, because also with human design, I have to say, and the gene keys, this is a wealth of information. We can read it and we can really get in our head, right? We can overthink it. We can try to figure it out, and it usually doesn't get us anywhere, probably more frustrated and more confused. But when we can just notice and take pauses in our daily life and actually see how these shadows are playing out in our daily life, and also how we can pause to feel our emotions, right? We are so trained and conditioned to not feel our emotions, which again, most often because we feel uncomfortable and we're trying to distract ourselves all the time, and we engage in activities just to keep ourselves busy and not feel these uncomfortable emotions. And I really believe that's limiting our growth potential. Because especially when it comes to emotional resilience and intelligence, our emotions are always the key to more abundance, to more growth, to more expansion in our lives, especially when we have those triggers come up. So yeah, it's all about pausing. Then also I studied Kabbalah more for quite some time this year, and I absolutely love it. It's also so aligned with what I have already learned from the human design concepts and gene keys as well. So I really feel like they're weaving in with each other. And also the most fundamental concept in Kabbalah to really get something out of this and really change your life, transform, to alchemize fears into magic and abundance and more prosperity in your life and harmonious relationships and whatever good stuff you envision for yourself, there is this concept of pausing. So anytime, especially when something triggering happens, when something is like, I don't like it, we're resisting, where's like, pause, what a pleasure. I learned this from David Guillaume. He has been teaching Kabbalah now for, I think, over 20 years. He has a lot of free resources. I invite you to check him out. It's called Kabbalah One. And yeah, this whole concept is about this slowing down, pausing, and instead of like reacting to the situation, where we actually can be in this mindset of like, okay, this is always happening for me. Everything in life is happening for me. And when we take that pause and actually receive it as something that is happening for us, when we say, what a pleasure, we can change it. Another way, I mean, you can say like, even though I don't like this situation, I love it. It's amazing, right? So, but again, it's requiring us to take a magic pause. And what I have also noticed from my journey as an online entrepreneur, I mean, very early on, I just started to notice like I'm different how I approach business than most of the stuff that I was learning from the programs I saw and took and participated in. I just was kind of, I felt a little bit like the black sheep, which I think so many of us can relate to. I was first thinking, what's wrong with me? Why is this not working? If I put all this effort into it and I follow this proven marketing concept, something just never felt right for me. And everything that I have done over the years always brought me back to first slowing down and then actually going more inwards, taking that magic pause and actually listening to myself. Because it's so easy to get caught up in all these opinions and different views we have in the world. And for me, as a highly sensitive, empathic, also introverted person, I still today have to be very careful not to get caught up into other people's convictions and ideas how things should be done or what you have to do to be successful. I always have to remind myself of that. And because I have noticed that when I listen too much to somebody's opinion or how things should be, I can easily get sucked into that because I'm not really listening to myself. But the more intentional pauses I take, and I keep checking in with myself. Okay, does this really feel aligned for me? Does this feel like the right kind of energy for me? And sometimes it's rough because, we all want to make good money. We want to help people. We want to be successful. Of course, we all want that. But if that comes at the price of, I want to say, lying to yourself in some way, because when I don't trust myself, when I don't listen to my inner knowing what really feels right, and I do what somebody else is telling me I should do, I'm really rejecting myself, right? I'm not honoring my truth. And in that way, it's kind of like introverted lying in some way, right? I think we so easily always blame other people when they don't tell the truth and label them as liars. But I think especially as empathic people and people pleasers oftentimes, still recovering from that, I think I have to really look at myself in terms of that, And I think the biggest gift that you can give the world, yourself, your soul's calling, your God-given purpose, how I like to call it, is really when you trust it inner knowing. And most of the time, it's not going to make any logical sense. I mean, this is the beauty that also human design has given me, right? This teaching that the mind is not here to make decisions. It happens in the body. It's your intuition. It's your inner knowing. It's your gut response. Sometimes it's a whole body visceral feeling. And without pausing, I really don't think we can step into the magic of really living your divine potential and purpose that you came here for on this earth, right? And ultimately, that's all what human design and gene keys is for me about, that you can be aware of when you're shifting off your unique direction, right? When you're drifting off the path of your purpose, because there's so much noise around you, there's so many opinions out there. And then we're kind of also with our energy scattered all over the place, and we are wondering why we're not really moving forward and don't see the progress. But when we take a slower approach and we incorporate these pauses into our literally daily life, and you can also have a monthly check-in where you really reflect on, hey, how are things going? Am I falling to just following other people's success recipes, or am I really listening to myself? And with that awareness, you can then again, as you take a pause, shift back into more alignment, which is always going back to, are you really listening to yourself, right? And this listening to yourself does not mean that we don't want to talk to other people, or we don't want to hear other people's opinions. But I have noticed that when I prioritize what feels right to me and make this the foundation of my business, then I also naturally attract the right kind of mentors and colleagues and collaborations that are further serving me, that are bringing in knowledge and wisdom that I didn't have on my own, right? And we can create like a win-win situation together with that. Also, with the work with my clients, this is a core concept. And I think, again, this is very much against what I first learned about coaching, and because it was all more mental and how to get people results and everything. But I have noticed that the more I can give you, my listeners, my clients, also the space to tune into your inner knowing through giving you the time and the space that you need. You know, even between coaching sessions, I always have a more relaxed, slow approach with that, where we also have intentional pauses between coaching sessions. And it just works like magic, because the biggest compliment that I receive from my clients is something along the lines of, wow, you brought me back home and I finally trust myself. I feel so more confident because I'm finally creating a life and business that feels like me. And I wish I would have found you earlier, because I invested so much money into all these proven success formulas that just didn't work for me. It doesn't feel right. You know, and while years ago I thought, well, there's nothing special about it, but in the more clients I have worked with and the more years have passed, I'm really realizing that's what really the world truly needs, in my humble opinion, right? And I please ask you to create your own opinion about this. This is not supposed to be a dogma or anything like that. But I truly believe that as we all create more intentional magic pauses in our lives, we can just create more win-win situations, and it's going to benefit really the world and humanity as a whole, because the more you get in touch with who you are and what feels right to you, the more we step into our authenticity and into our unique essence, right? And I also know for myself that whenever I really honor my need to take a pause, a little break, you can also call it a break, right? I'm so much more productive, as if I were to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and keep going and everything, right? Even for some reason, what comes to my mind is in school, we also have pauses, right? I think it's here in the US, I think it's called different, but growing up in Germany, we actually have the term Pause. It's literally like a pause, right? Where we take a break for 30 minutes, where we can eat our snack or sandwich we brought to school, and we play and have fun, and then we go back to class and get back together. And now it came back to my mind. So here in the US, it's called recess, I think, where also kids have breaks. And I think I remember when my daughter started to go to, I don't know if it was 5th grade or 4th grade, all of a sudden they no longer had recess twice a year, I think just once, or not even a full recess anymore. I don't remember exactly, but I was a little bit shocked. I'm like, wow, kids need more breaks. So I'm also putting this out to schools. Give your kids more magic pauses. I think they're going to be much more productive. And also, so funny how my mind works, or my connection to my intuition or divine guidance. But when I was working in corporate, you remember that corporate job that I got eventually let go of over 6 years ago, I always noticed how tired I would get when I was just sitting at the computer screen looking at my Excel sheet and running numbers or running payroll. I literally, it got tired. And when I allowed myself to take breaks, and my partner and I, at the time, we were still working at the company together, we went for walks. And while it wasn't really welcomed because I took probably more breaks than I was supposed to, because, you know, you have to work your 8 hours, I felt refreshed and rejuvenated. I had more energy, and I think I was so much more productive because I incorporated a break, a pause, magic in my day, you know? And I truly believe that also in the workforce, by taking intentional pauses and more of it, people are going to be more productive, and actually they're going to get more done when they work less hours and we have more time freedom. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think the Magic Pause has a lot of potential. I'm very excited about it. And yeah, so this was just for me to inform you guys. Informing is something that has been also an integral part of my business these days. And probably I have been informing you already for several months, because I already shared here and there that I will rename this podcast to the Magic Pause, but it kind of took me a long time. So I just like to let you know, I don't want to just have the new episode next week and all of a sudden it's like, where did the art of slowing down go? No, it's the Magic Pause. So this is a little reminder that it feels uncomfortable to let go of parts of our identity, because I have to be honest, the art of slowing down has become me, right? It's almost like too comfortable. But there is this newness that wants to emerge. And I almost try to ignore it and like, I should just keep it the same way. But as I'm even speaking about the art of slowing down versus the magic pause, I feel more lit up. I feel more excited by this idea of the magic pause, right? And of course, they're deeply connected. It's very much the same theme. And yeah, with that, it's just so important that you trust what wants to come through me with that. And I'm just here to serve this mission of the Magic Pause. I hope that it will change millions of people's lives in a positive way. And I'm here to come on a weekly basis, as you have already gotten used to. And I will share my insights, as usually, still all about human design and gene keys, maybe some other concepts I'm picking up along the way. Also, as you know, true sidereal astrology has become a big part of the work I do and how it impacts human design and the gene keys. I will also continue to have conversations, very curated guests that really fit the theme of this podcast, that I believe can bring amazing value to you guys and kind of also broaden your perspective. And, you know, also sometimes it's very powerful to hear a message from different people until it really clicks. I know this for myself, that I have heard things oftentimes, a gazillion times, and I understand them in my mind, but I have to sometimes hear it many times and then read it. And then there's this one person that I have to hear it from, and then it really makes click. And maybe I'm the person, but maybe it's one of my guest speakers, right? That's going to be also truly amazing. So with that, I also want to let you know that I currently have an amazing program going that starts actually next week, also on November 5th, which is the same day that the Magic Pause is launching. And this is the program called The Magic of Your Story. I'm super excited about this program. We already have an amazing group together. It's going to be 4 weeks where we really work on empowering you to get in touch with your unique story. And especially if you're thinking right now, well, but I don't have a story, it's super ordinary, especially then you want to really dive into your story so you can really own it and start to share it. Because this is another thing, along with this podcasting journey, I have been sharing my story a lot. You know, it's in pieces. Like, sharing a story is not always about having to share everything from A to Z from the time you were born until now, right? It's more about specific events and specific moments that really had a significance for you. And when you share that, it really helps people get an idea. It creates a shift, a transformation for them. And again, with that, that's also one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about podcasting, because it gives you such a beautiful platform for that. And in this program, we're also going to integrate, for inspiration, some wisdom from human design and gene keys as well. But it's not so much about, oh, you have this gate and this is what your story is, right? Your story is going to be very unique. So I'm really going to help you to bring this more into your daily life. And also, if you are an entrepreneur, also into your business, because this is honestly the magic sauce that I feel like is not often talked about. And I'm very grateful that my mentors actually talk a lot about it. And also, I have been working with my mentors recently a lot, all about storytelling. They're really big on that. And it just also inspired me with that. I also myself have a lot of storytelling in my human design chart and gene keys. And I love stories. I just love stories. I always say that I connect mostly with people through stories in my personal life and also in my business, I have found. And I learn also the best when I hear people's stories. I really remember things so much better when I hear somebody's story, like, oh yeah, that was the person that had this story. And then I make the connection and it brings me to the learning lesson. And I have also noticed in hindsight, when I teach, and I do this literally, I guess, here on the podcast, also in my client containers, in my membership, also when I have private coaching and human design reading sessions, I always use stories. And it has just dawned on me over the last 6 months or so that this is also part of why I believe I am such a great teacher, because I always weave in stories into everything that I do. And such my clients and my audience, they really retain what I share so much better when I hear stories. Of course, I can always improve on that myself. I think I still have a lot to learn with this myself, but I feel very confident at this time now to guide you into, again, owning and sharing your own stories so that you can attract more of your solar client lines into your life, because I think that is much more important than focusing first on fancy marketing strategies or how you have to say things, because people need to really connect you through who you are as a human being, right? And that usually happens the most profound when you can vulnerably, empowered, in an empowered way, though, really share your story. So that's the main focus of this program. It's also on super special pricing right now. Check out, I'm going to put the link in the bio. I would love to welcome you there and let the magic of your story unfold. And with that, I'm very excited to have double magic next week, because it's going to be the birth of the Magic Pause podcast and the magic of your story. So with that, I want to leave you for today. I love you very much. Thank you for being such loyal listeners. As always, I really appreciate your time, love, and energy. And I'm excited to be with you all for the very first episode of the Magic Pause next week. Bye, everyone.